Welcome back to Made Possible by Pop Culture Season 2. I'm Danielle Terciano, and this is the podcast where I invite guests to come on and share stories from pop culture's past and present that have greatly shaped them. Now, if you're sitting at home wondering, Danielle, why are you wearing a tropical dress? It's September. I'm in a fall cozy sweater drinking a pumpkin spice latte. Are you insane? No, I live in Los Angeles where we're experiencing a heat wave, but also it's always summer in my heart. So I'm not going to promise you that I won't wear something like this in future episodes in the fall or even in the winter. So you may want to stay tuned and stay on your toes for those. But for now, get excited for this week's episode because I have a great guest, actor and director Jon Huertas. You probably know him best from Castle. He played Javi there. From This Is Us, where he played Miguel. He's done a lot of other shows as an actor. He's done movies, but he's also director. Episodes of Tracker, The Rookie Feds, and most recently, The Irrational Season 2. And I do also want to set up that this episode may be a little bit different than previous ones because as much as I like to do my research for what we're about to talk about, Jon picked a past pop culture influence that is not available to stream in full, and it was not something I'd ever seen before. So he's going to give us a little bit of an education today. Enjoy. All right. Well, Jon, first of all, thank you for coming on the podcast, obviously. It's very good also to see you because I feel like the majority of what I've seen of you in the most recent present was Miguel, was, the wig and the clothes.
Right.
So it's good to see you.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad I don't have to wear that wig anymore. God, that was
Yeah.
hardcore. And now I know how women, feel after wearing a wig for like 10 hours, how the scalp is just like, tense.
Do you feel like it gave you a glimpse into like your future in terms of I do or don't want to look like this guy, so I'm gonna change some things about myself?
There were some indicators that I was like, all right, I'm not going to deal with the waddle. I'm never going to have a waddle. That thing they put on me. And then I don't think my hair is ever going to go as light, like gray as that. My grandfather had dark hair until he was old, and so does my mom. So I have a feeling I don't have many grays now, which there are people 10 years, 15 years younger than me that have more gray. So I think my hair is going to be okay. But yeah, definitely some of the stuff, like mostly the waddle, like you can't have
Different fashion choices, different time period. That's partially why I'm starting talking about This Is Us, is because this podcast is looking through time in terms of different influences. And I always ask everybody to set up their past influence because I like hearing like the passion in their voice about why they were drawn to something. In this case, I need you to set it up because I'm going to be totally honest with you. I normally complain about journalists who don't research. I couldn't watch this movie in full because it is not available streaming anywhere. So
really?
I've seen clips of it, but I'm going to need you to really like, we're going to be on a education tour today because I never saw it when it came out because I'll be honest, I wasn't around when it came out. And then now, sorry, I don't mean it to sound like that, but it came out like a month before I was born. So like, it was not easily accessible to me, even on VHS. But I tried to go back and watch it now, and I was like, well, I can find clips on YouTube, and they were fantastic. But that was a lot of my preamble for you to set up what this is, because it's a very cool project and a very cool art that I don't get to talk about a lot. So lead us in, set the scene, if you would, as the director.
Well, I mean, I think for me, one of the major influences in my life, because of first of all, the age that I was when this, this kind of movie and culture kind of developed. I was around 12, 13 years old when breakdancing became the phenomenon that it did. And it started in the neighborhood that I'm from. I think a lot of it started in that neighborhood, which is the Bronx as well. When this movie Breakin' comes out, I'm one of those kids that's, already wanting to be an actor. But also, musical theater was kind of my background. And I remember Fame, the show Fame was on the original version of it. and all I wanted to be was be at a school like that. But I wasn't. And then, you know, there's dances incorporated, acting was incorporated in that school, all of a sudden. Then this movie Breaking comes out, and there's a guy, the lead in this movie that's in theaters, looks like me. He comes from where I come from. Shabadoo was his like street name, but his last name was Quiones. I can't remember what his first. He was like Adolfo, maybe Quiones, but everybody knew him as Shabadoo from his street name, his breaking name. So, to see somebody like me in a movie about something I was doing, which was, I had a breakdancing group called ESP. A lot of people think that it was about being psychic, but it was like the East Side Posse.
Hmm.
So I had a breakdancing group, and we danced in front of grocery stores and old folks' homes, and what it did was it gave me my first opportunity, really, to be a professional, because we put out a hat or a box or something, and people would put money in there. And some of the gigs that we had, like breakdancing, we got paid at the old folks' home. Some for us to come in and like entertain people that had never seen this art form before, and so they book us off like $50 or something like that that we could split. And it was my first kind of foray into professional, being a professional entertainer, and uh, and I got the kind of adrenaline rush and the gratification from performing in front of an audience, and so it influenced me immensely because that's all I wanted to do was kind of evoke an emotional response from people I didn't know. That's why I'm in this business. So I think it weighed heavy on me, just that movie and everything. Partly because I just didn't see people on screen like me either, and especially in movie theaters. I think Isai Morales was one of the other
Hmm.
people I saw like me. He was in a movie called Bad Boys with Sean Penn that not a lot of people know about. But yeah, Breaking was like that movie, and all of us kids loved it.
I want to go through all of that because you said you were already breakdancing on your own when the movie came out. When
Right.
did you start? Because you didn't grow up I know you were born in New York, but you didn't grow up in New York, right? You grew up a little south. So how did you start
Well,
breakdancing before the film?
I was actually born in Virginia, moved to New York, grew up in New York till I was 13, then moved back to Virginia.
Gotcha. Okay.
Went to high school in Virginia. But it was right before I moved to Virginia is when all the kids in the neighborhood were starting this trend of breakdancing. And I think the first kind of version of it was like what was that called? If you remember, you probably don't remember because you don't even know breaking. But there was a show
I,
called "What's Happening," and it was there was this thing that style of dance that the lead character on What's Happening did, which now has kind of gotten popular mostly overseas. But I think that was the beginning of popping, and this was popping and locking, and then breakdancing was more uh, the floor routines and the acrobatics and the
yeah.
acro stuff. But popping was like the first thing that people did, and that came from this other thing, locking. That was locking. Yeah,
Yeah.
popping and locking.
I was
So
gonna say
locking,
I grew up in New York, so I've saw a lot of kids doing it. I will be honest
yeah,
and say, like, my friends were very white and were not doing it, rightfully so. Probably they would have not been great at it, but I do remember, seeing it on the street in the subway. But I feel
yeah,
like by the time that was happening, I don't know, it was a little bit different. It
probably
had
wasn't as
different
popular
influences.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kids on the street, and so like I said, like started doing it before I moved, and then when I moved, I was able to take it to the neighborhood that I moved to outside of DC in Virginia. Like these kids hadn't seen it before,
Hmm.
and so and in the movie was one of those movies that you just watch over and over and over again when you're a kid. So that movie, like they don't people don't watch movies like that as much anymore. I don't think where a movie comes out and then you just watch it for years upon years. We would watch that movie whenever we had time.
Hmm.
In the summer, especially, we're off school, get together, and then let's put on a movie, and it would be like that, or it'd be like First Blood. But that was a movie that we just all watched. I know we watched it for 3 years straight, every summer, every
Mm.
day almost. It was that kind of. That's how. And then the sequel comes out, Breaking Two, Electric Boogaloo. But then you know we had to start watching that one and watch that one over and over again. But uh, yeah, it was that's I think back then for me, movies that spoke to you, or even sometimes songs, but movies that spoke to you, like you would just put it on whenever you got an opportunity. And I remember having probably 5 movies that I just had to watch,
Mm.
and especially in the summertime, I had to watch it like every day. I'd watch usually 3 or 4 movies a day when I was a kid. And breaking was definitely one of them because I was breakdancing, but it was also, I wanted to be a performer.
You bring up a couple of interesting points. First of all, the fact that you said, whether or not people watch movies like this now, I do think
Hmm.
a lot of it is because you were young. That's a big part of like why it impressed itself upon you. Like you were interested in that subject matter.
Right.
I do wonder though, like, do you go if you go back and watch it now, do you judge it differently? Like, because now you are an actor, you are a director, are you looking at it in a different light?
Well, I haven't been able to watch the movie because you can't stream it
Well, right.
anywhere.
I thought maybe you
But
had it on DVD or something.
what I do now is just you go to YouTube and there are clips of it, so you can
Yeah.
watch just certain clips of the movie. And every once in a while, I do. Yeah, I'll feel nostalgic about my upbringing, and I'll just like, oh, I wonder if I can find something on Breaking. And there were other movies, other breakdancing movies, and I do that with lots of different movies and lots of different things to just find them on YouTube and watch them. But I watch clips of them. So, but yeah, Breaking, if you can find it. But there is, when I have watched clips, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, it was. These weren't the best actors of our time.
Well, it was also the time period, like the way you made
Yeah,
movies in the 80s were very,
exactly.
that's also part of it.
And they hired like actual break dancers to play break dancers. It wasn't like they were teaching actors how to dance. So, um, it was, you weren't going to get the most
Mm.
phenomenally experienced actor if you want to tell a real story about breaking. So, um, yeah, that doesn't stand up in that way. The filmmaking and the acting is, I've seen better, but
Well,
I don't.
but
It doesn't take anything away from the movie.
no, no, I wouldn't think so. And part of why I asked is because like the thing that you connected to, I want to dig into that a little bit because you mentioned, you hadn't really seen anyone who looked like you on screen, especially in movies. So you connected in that way. You were doing breakdancing, so you connected in that way. When you were watching this movie over and over again, especially with your friends, did you find that your connection point to it stayed the same throughout? Or were there moments where, okay, like right now, I'm more interested in the story. Right now, I'm more interested in this character. Right now, I'm really interested in like, oh, that's a move I haven't done yet. I want to learn how to do that. And maybe if I pause this enough times.
Yeah,
How
I
did that?
definitely did that.
Okay.
I definitely did that. And then yeah, then I feel like every time I watched it, I would find something to follow about it, like from the story to the love story to the sidekick, like his story and his growth. But always, for the most part, like Shabadoo is just someone who, like, that was me, and so I would always just see myself in him. And that's, for the most part, I kind of lived vicariously through his
Mm.
journey in the movie. I put myself, what if I'm this guy? What if I'm this character? And do I make the same choices he makes?
Mm.
Or you're watching it in hopes that this time he makes a different choice. Because I think back then, especially as like a 12 or 13-year-old, I still had a vivid imagination, and so maybe I didn't understand that. The movie is the movie. It's
Right.
never, they're never going to make a different choice. But every time I would watch it, you would root when he makes the wrong choice. You would go, oh, not this time. And then, oh, that's right, it's a movie, and he's gonna do it again the same way. So I think, I definitely always gravitated toward Shabadoo's uh, character's journey because I just saw myself in him so much. And you know, I got to meet him one day when I moved to
Oh,
LA,
that's nice.
which was crazy. Yeah, we had the same agent
Oh, that's crazy.
for a
Because I
while.
was
Yeah.
gonna, one of the things I was going to ask you, and I still would love to hear this, but when you do connect to a character that way, but you're also realizing like, okay, this actor is also kind of like me. Do you then, outside of this movie, were you also trying to follow his career differently? Like, did, other films that he was doing? I mean, I also know obviously it was different than you can't just Google someone and be like, what are you doing now? Type of
Exactly.
thing. But
Yeah, there was no
how
Google.
did that work?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't do a ton of movies, just some guest stars on TV shows and stuff like that. But I tried to follow as closely as I could with the resources we had back then. But then once, I got to LA and, my agents who ended up, representing him as well, when they, when you have something in common with someone else, like sometimes the agents will put you together. So maybe there's something happens, some spark happens,
Mm.
some new idea. And so that's what happened. Our agents kind of put us together. That you should meet Shabadoo, you should meet John. And I was like, and of course I'll meet him. Like he's a huge hero to me. But his career wasn't where he wanted it to be at the time for sure. And so, but I tried to learn as much from him as possible when I met him, and then and I gave him, I think, the love he deserved for bringing that character to life that influenced me so heavily. And but then we literally saw each other once, and then I don't know what happened to his career after that.
Did
But
he,
it's funny, like
was,
we didn't. Yeah, you bring up an interesting point. Like we didn't have Google and
yeah, I was like, I don't
IMDb
really know
Pro
what
or
you
anything
would
like
do
that.
to try to find him. Cause like what I would do with the things that I was watching in the 90s, like there were magazines, and in the back of the magazines, there would be like certain
Right, right,
management offices or whatever. You could write letters and they would send you back autographed pictures because you're a fan. That's a very different
right.
vibe than like, I'm
Now
a
are these the Teen
professional
Bot
already.
magazines?
Yeah.
The teen.
Like
That's the
Teen
thing. I
Beat.
didn't. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't look at
It's a
Teen
different
Beat, Tiger
demographic,
Beats.
maybe.
Yeah, I was in those magazines at one
Right,
point,
right. That's what I mean. Like you weren't reading them, but you
but I
were
wasn't
probably
reading them.
your
Yeah,
address was probably courtesy of your agent or manager in the back.
yeah,
Yeah, but
exactly.
that's when you were talking about like your agents put you together, did you mention it? How does that even come up that like, oh, I love this guy or this movie, or was it because your agent knew special skill breakdancing?
I think that's what maybe one of the reasons is because yeah, the definitely that was part of my skill set. It was mentioned, I think, but then also just because of our backgrounds, I think both being Afro Latino and being from that part of the country, I think that they just were like, yeah, let's put them together and see if something spark and become like an amazing idea that we can take out and try to get interest in or something like that.
Yeah. I mean,
Sure.
obviously outside of the dancing aspect of the film, recognizing yourself as a person of color who is not depicted on screen at that time a lot, even now, not as much as should be. Same kind of question as to like what did you do after that? Was there a conscious effort to try to seek out more content where the characters looked like you, and how did that go? Because we all know there was less of it, but I do know that like if you can dig and find resources and go through the years of film history, you can kind of like piecemeal something together, but might not always be the best example.
I think I just just a person who like to devour, you know, television and film and even stage. Like I just wanted to watch a great story, and someone would show up that looked like me or had my background or similar experiences, and I would then, then it would resonate even deeper with me. Like, for instance, the first time I saw Mabamba or um, Chips, with Eric Estrada, like I would go, oh, he's like me, so I'm a huge fan, and that this show now
Yeah.
means more to me. But I already loved the show, or I loved a movie. And that's kind of how I feel that, with regards to representation, which is a word that I don't really uh, like anymore.
Hmm.
'Cause we need more than just representation. We need to be a part of the ecosystem. Representation is like, oh, yeah, we have one on a TV show or in a cast or something like that. No, we need like executives and directors and showrunners, and all of that is how we need to be serviced. I think as audience members is we need to we need to be a part of the entire ecosystem and not just like oh, we've got a character in the TV show.
Right. Well, first of all, if
So
you only have the one, it always feels like they're just doing it as a token. Like we are filling a spot because we have to.
a,
Like
a lot of
there
times,
needs to
yeah,
be a reason like that character is written away and authentically.
right. So for me, like I always just like stories that take me on a journey, whether it's a romantic journey, a journey of power and struggle, and overcoming that. So I didn't like watch things trying to find like
Sure.
people look like me, but if someone did look like me in that story, that made that project resonate that much deeper with me. And I think
Makes
that's what
sense.
we need to continue to do, but at a higher level. I mean, I feel like it should be, for 20% of the population, 20% of leading roles should be people who look like you.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I
Also,
also that's when I got the email that was like you want to talk about breaking and I started to do the research process to realize like oh they found actual authentic kids that could do this that were breakdancers. And then I was like, oh,
yeah,
maybe the production team came from this world too. And then I was like, no, I don't think that's true. So I found that really surprising. Just somebody had a vision, and I don't know if they were hopping on a trend and doing it because they figured like easy money will grab an audience that like hadn't been served before or not. And I want to be cynical about that and be like, you shouldn't just be going for a cash grab, but at the same time, like you elevated these voices, you elevated this art form, and now we have an example of it, which hopefully somebody will stream it, put it on streaming after this podcast comes out so more people can watch it. But like
right.
that to me, I was very surprised by that because like that was something that I didn't think happened a lot. I still don't think it happens a lot. Is how, as somebody who was a performer at a young age and knew like this was going to be your profession, were you cognizant of that? Like, is that something you're thinking about and looking at when you're seeing like credits roll and things like that?
I think so. Yeah, I think I always was pretty cognizant of like how movies get made. Uh, to a point. Like I couldn't know like on a deep level how they get
Hmm.
made, but just like how stories, um, uh, how someone comes up with a concept and how they develop it. I mean, I kind of was interested in that, interested in movie magic. Like I got like the movie magic or something. And yeah, I think started looking at it like that once I got a little later in high school and I had my first cinematography class.
Wait, in
Um,
high school? You had cinematography in high school?
Yeah, 11th grade. There was a college called Shenandoah University. It used to be called it was a conservatory for ballet and musical theater. And so a professor from there taught at high school. They taught cinematography.
That's
So me and
cool.
my
I will say
friends,
I feel like more high school kids should have that opportunity. Like if you know that's what you
right?
want to do, or even if you don't know, like to just try it out and to know that's a possibility for you, that's
I
pretty cool.
think, I mean, I think so. I mean, I wish, and my guidance counselor, when I told him I wanted to be a professional entertainer, the response was, "What do you want to end up flipping burgers?" So
Right.
if I was rude because I like
Yes.
burgers, I would if I would flip burgers, at least I'd be happy and
Yeah.
satiated all
Yeah.
the time. But
But that's
but
probably not, they need to fill your quota of like, you have to go to
yeah,
college, you have to do this, you have to do that. Like
yeah,
I went
that's
to
what they were saying.
I went to a magnet school, which was stupid because it was for math and science, and I'm not a math or science person. They
Hmm.
literally had that where it was like if you were applying to schools that they thought you couldn't get into, they would hand you applications for the New York City and state schools and be like, you have to at least apply to one of these because we can't have someone not get into college at all. And we know you'll get in here.
And I
And
think
I
it's
refused
an
to do it because I was like, I'm not going to go to that school. So I'm not going to waste my time and I'm not going to take up
right,
somebody else's spot. I'm not going to spend the money on the fee of that particular application. But I was like, but
right,
that's, they don't, I mean, I don't want to speak ill of all educators, but like, I think a lot of the times it's just like we have certain metrics we have to hit. We're not actually paying attention. So when you said like
right,
cinematography in high school, I was like, oh my God, I wish I had gone there.
right. Well, Tim Cook recently was at a conference. I think he was at a conference in China. Um, but he was talking about, why major corporations do a lot of their manufacturing in China, and most people kind of are under the guise that it's because the labor is that much cheaper. And he said yeah, 30 years ago maybe, but
Mm,
right now the labor is not any cheaper, really. It's not that much cheaper. But what they do have that we don't have are like technicians that can put tiny little parts together for iPhones. They have it in abundance because they believe in vocation, a vocational school, where
mm,
we push everyone to go to college, even like, at least just get your 2 year and then you can transfer to 4 year. And we focus so much, and not everybody's destined for college. Not everybody, there we need people to have vocational expertise, people that keep our air conditioners running and our water systems running. And these aren't, you don't have to have a college degree for these things. And if you let people start, dabbling in those other skills, and I would, I might even say other arts,
mm.
because it's, to me, because I'm doing, like, I build stuff, and I call myself a maker. I'm building my own house. I do all, these are, and I see it as somewhat of an art form,
Oh yeah.
because the tools I had to learn to use to be an actor, be a working actor, from college to then acting classes to grounding classes, like those tools, like I said, I use tools to perform. As a director, I use tools. I use shot lister. I use scriptation. I use all these things. So that's what someone who's working on a car, or someone who's building a house, or that's art. That's art. If anyone's ever like poured concrete and smoothed it out, like how is that not art? You're
Mm.
literally using something similar to a paintbrush, but it's made out of metal, and you're making something smooth or and round or curved. And it's so to me, I think we should in this country, promote vocation a little bit more. It's as much as we promote a higher level of education when it comes to college.
It's also skills that like if we don't do that, we're not gonna no one's gonna be able to fix our own toilets. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like where are all our plumbers? I say this all the time. I'm like, I
Yeah.
have friends who have kids. I'm like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. Maybe I'll be a teacher. Great.
Right.
Teacher's a great vocation. And then I have friends who have kids that are like just on social media being like, how did they get that? How did they get paid for that? I want to do that. That seems easy. And I'm like, I mean, I don't want to say that's not its own skill, but I don't need more of you trying to sell me skincare. I need somebody to fix my toilet. Like, I don't
Right.
know how to
Exactly.
fix my own toilet.
Yeah.
So,
Well, also now the people that can come fix your toilet or anything else, like they're charging upwards of,
oh my God,
80
I
to
know.
$150 an hour, because the
Because they
demand,
can.
because they can, because there's not as many. Imagine if there was more competition. And if
Yeah.
you could fix your own toilet,
And
what
because they
what are they
know
going to do?
I can get ripped off because I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know how to do this. I looked on YouTube. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't want to make the problem worse.
Right.
Honestly, that's an art too. If you can look at me and tell me what you think I'm willing to pay, you deserve the money I'm going to give you.
Right. Exactly.
So I want to go back because my last episode was a lot about remakes. Things
About
from
what?
remakes like
Oh yeah.
specifically Bel Air and Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, but obviously things from the past. Your love of Breaking the movie, is this a project that you feel like don't touch it, leave it alone, let it be what it is? Or is it something where you're like, I'd love to remake that someday because I had an authentic foot in this world and I think we could do a very cool modern version of it?
I've thought about that. Remaking Breaking. But it's it had to be done the right way. I think, very much like how they made 21 Jump Street, where it was like just a full-blown comedy.
Mhm.
I think that's how you have to make Breaking. Like, it's funny. There are a lot of funny moments in Breaking, but I think if it's a full-blown, like, this is a comedy, uh, it's gonna have great dancing in it too. But it's a comedy, and we're gonna laugh all the way to the bank. That's how I would do it. But only if it was the path forward was easy. Right now, it's so hard with IP. Everybody's probably, I mean, someone has already got the IP, I'm sure. So I probably won't be able to get it, but I'm gonna maybe check into it after this.
Someone has it, but I don't know that they wouldn't be willing to bring you on as a partner or part with it because I do think that I hate to say this, but I think when so many of the major players from the original are no longer with us, it sometimes might be easier because you don't have to like get anyone's blessing. Or
Right.
not no one's blessing, but some people whose blessing maybe you needed, you no longer need.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe we'll see. I'm gonna I'm gonna explore it a little bit, see what we can do. Like it's probably the studio. The studio probably owns the
Yeah.
rights, whoever the last distributor was. So see, you might see my name on there as a director.
Okay. We'll just tell everybody at MGM to give you a call. So you mentioned obviously the tools that you have as a director a second ago. I know you mentioned one of the things that is on your mind these days is like AI and ChatGPT. And I'm curious if this is a tool. I want you to again set this up in terms of, is this a tool that people are trying to get you to use? Is this a tool that you think actually could be helpful in your career in either acting or directing? Like, where do you start with where you stand on it? And then I think that'll lead us into how it's influencing you.
So yeah, I mean, I definitely think that AI and ChatGPT, and AI tools are a major influence in pop culture right now. There are so many people using it. If you're on Instagram, and like you said earlier, there are people on there telling you how they make money and trying to teach you how to make money. And a lot of these people are doing it by using AI tools from ChatGPT. And for me, I think it's very important for us to learn how to use ChatGPT and other tools as a tool to help us in our craft, whatever that craft might be. Like mine's obviously director, writer, producer, whatever now, and even actor. I mean, I think that I would love a tool that because there now actors have to put themselves on tape for a lot of roles because people are lazier than ever, and so I think if I can put an iPad up and and I was able to create the character that I'm reading opposite so that there's an AI tool that then, if I describe the other character of the scene, uh, suddenly AI creates that character. So now when I'm reading with my own iPad, because you can't always find somebody to read with you,
Mm.
um, it's got a real voice, it's got real intonation on whatever the subject of the scene is, and it's, a female and then it flips to a male because there's three people in the scene or whatever. I think that's a great tool that I'd be able to use as an actor and other actors. I would think that'd be a great tool for them. So I think using, I think a lot of people, it's influencing a lot of people culturally right now, AI and ChatGPT. It's allowing us to uh, find out information faster than ever instead of Google. You just ask ChatGPT. It's allowing us to, for instance, when I have an interview like this with someone like you and they want a bio, and I've got one bio that's, 400 words, and, if I'm going to do a panel or something, they're going to introduce me. Do I want them to read 400 words of my bio? No. Like I can ask ChatGPT, reduce this down to 100 words, but keep all of the cool stuff. Like ChatGPT will then reduce it down, and suddenly I've got a short bio that reads better, and I could and make it an introduction instead of just a bio for someone to read. And suddenly, like that's I think, a great tool for me, and or Rachel can speak to this for publicists.
I was just gonna
You
say,
know,
I feel like you're taking Rachel's job, well, a little bit with
no, no,
that, because
no,
that, I
no.
mean, as a writer, like that is so much of what we've had to do historically. And I will say that, now, listen, entertainment journalism has been in a downfall. That's like why I started this podcast anyway last year. But all of that being kind of pushed to the side because I don't want to rehash that conversation. A lot of the jobs that do exist now are editing AI. Like you're no longer editing a freelancer in that line of work. You're no longer editing a freelancer. You're editing an AI article. And I look at that and I go, I don't know that I want to edit a robot. Like what happened to all those people that used to have a job? And so that's I'm fascinated by like your very specific like example of it would help you as an actor to work off of the character. I'm like, I totally see that. I don't necessarily disagree with that. But where I get worried about it is in all of the things that it's replacing a person. Like that was not necessarily replacing a person because when you're self-taping, if you live at home, there's no person there to replace, right? But like
Right.
I don't know. I'm fascinated because I also feel like as an actor, how do you like the face scanning, being able to like, and I know the unions fought for this protection,
Yeah,
but
we're protected for the
that
most part.
now, but that's what I
Yeah.
mean. It was so fascinating last year during the strikes to like hear Oh, right. This was not ever written in any sort of language because we didn't know that this could happen. That if they scan your face, they could use you indefinitely. That was scary
Yeah,
to me. I'll say that. I don't know,
yeah. I
how
mean,
much people thought it would actually happen.
I think the background artists were the ones in jeopardy of being scanned and used and not compensated. I think actors would have always had some sort of protections in place
Hmm.
when it comes to that part of it. But I think that you know, times have always changed with technology, with the change of technology. Technology changes faster than it ever has. But I remember in the 70s, my grandfather had a great job at IBM,
Hmm.
and whatever he was working on at IBM, the technology, uh, once they accomplished the goals they had set out to accomplish, that technology replaced my grandfather's job at the same company that he was working on. So they laid him off because they didn't need him anymore. Um, it's cyclic, and technology is always going to change, and human beings are lazy. I mean, go all the way back to the remote control, which was,
Hmm.
by the way, invented by a black man. But the remote control used to be just one button, change the TV channel. But now your remote control can do everything, and now we're past remote controls. But it used to be, but it kept you on the couch. So you don't get up, you don't go turn the knob anymore, right? And now I can just ask Google
Hmm.
to turn on and off the kitchen lights, the air conditioner, change the channel on the TV. Like it's we as humans, I think we just want to, get lazier and lazier so we
Oh,
don't do
yeah.
anything. Just like when we watch Star Trek and they have now, you don't have to cook food anymore. You just ask the machine to make you some lasagna, and there's a machine that just makes it. So we can't fight technology. We have to just figure out how to use it.
Right.
And so,
I
yeah,
think that's what it is like, well,
right,
we know it's not going to go away. And as you said, like it's cyclical, like this is not the first time something is replacing jobs,
right,
but what I am interested in is how are we using it and how are we teaching it to be used? Because as you mentioned, cutting down a bio or looking something up and not using Google, I can't tell you how many examples I see when you ask it to do something and it gives you back wrong information. It's like, I do feel like, I don't know where it's pulling its information from sometimes, but
right.
I worry it's making us dumber because it's making us lazier, but it's also giving us incorrect information that we are saying, well, the machine figured it out. It must be right.
Well, I
Since
think, I think that's instead. I don't put the blame on the machine. I put the blame on the human for not then, fact checking the machine. Like, if it pulls wrong information, you go, yep, this is good, and you put it out there, then you're not doing your job as an editor
I
or
mean,
whatever.
honestly, yeah, I was gonna say that is my biggest gripe is that nobody has time and nobody does fact check and even really edit. A lot of
Oh
times,
yeah,
like an article will
I
go
still
up.
read. Oh yeah, I read articles from like USA Today or wherever, and when I see grammatical errors and typos, I know that what this. I don't know if this is any longer a news agency or a piece of entertainment,
Yeah.
because the reason I think it's getting put out there so fast and not being edited and proofread and proofed or whatever is because they're trying to get the article out before they do. It's a
Well, that,
race. It's
yes.
a race. It's a race to get the story out there so that you know, your shareholders and your advertisers are like, this is where we want to put our dollars,
Hmm.
right? And then that's not necessarily about truth. It's about, to me, that makes it a piece of entertainment.
Yeah. But it
Because
also
you're
is.
trying to get eyeballs to justify the dollars, right?
It is. It's speed, and it is also copy editors are literally the first people. There are no copy editors anymore. There's nobody who that's just their, not literally zero at all publications, but for example, I don't think it's a speaking out of turn. I worked at a Variety for a number of years. We had two copy editors that would only deal with print. They didn't work online and they only dealt with some
Mm,
of the print articles. So like right there, you have editors who are more top editors, story editors, having to be copy editors. And maybe that's not your skill set, A.
right,
B, now, because it's been years later, there's only one copy editor there. And they're
right,
lucky that they have one.
right.
So like I mean, that is a bigger problem than just AI, but like that is, I think it's all starting from, well, if you're trying to cut corners everywhere and then you're saying this machine will replace the corners we cut, how is that possible when somebody has to teach the machine how to do it? And
Right.
maybe the person who's most equipped to teach the machine doesn't want to because they don't want to lose their job. I don't know. That's where I come from because I'm like, I literally was at an interview for a job and I said to them, how much AI editing is this? And they were like, well, right now it's probably about 20%, but over the next 3 to 4 years, we feel like it'll be about 70. And I was like, no, not for me. Sorry. You can have somebody else teach the robot. I don't feel good about putting all of those writers out of work because I was a freelance writer for so long. And again,
Right.
very specific area. There are probably other areas where it is better used or more helpful. I
Yeah.
don't know. How do you feel about it in like for entertainment purposes? Have you watched any of the reality shows where they're bringing in AI elements to kind of ease the audience in? Okay.
No, because I don't even really watch any reality shows. Zero really. So,
That's
uh,
that's fair. You're busy. You're doing other things.
yeah, and if I want to watch something, it's going to be something that someone's crafted, a piece of crafted, art and entertainment. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think as long as it's used properly in our industry, I'm for it, but it's got to be used properly, and it's got to be, there's got to be some oversight. We can't take uh an actor's scan or face because you don't even need to scan anybody's face anymore. Literally, if you capture them on pixels, it's not film anymore. If you capture them on pixels, you can recreate an actor's face that quickly. So as long as we're not doing that, instead of bringing an actor back to reshoot something, I think as long as there's oversight, and that's what unions are for, build in the oversight. And I believe in labor unions as protection for uh, workers. And I don't know if freelance writers have a union that they can
No.
belong to, but
I mean, this is part of the problem, right? Like individual
right,
publications, some of them do have a union for that corporate entity. But that's not even freelance. That's the staff at that place might be protected.
yeah,
Um,
that's what I'm saying.
very few
That's
places have that.
right. So, for me, like if for instance, the freelance writers, if there's worry that AI is going to push them out, or if even you, or whatever, have, I'm not going to work for a company that's going to go 70%. But if the workers were protected, that
It would be different.
we're the but it's the workers that have to come together.
Yeah.
We're all going to be protected, but we're going to organize and we're going to make this. And so, you know, that's the only way to keep AI at bay and keep AI from doing everything is to organize and then become a group. And so I think, and that's what I'm glad we did during the strikes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like it was a huge issue during the strikes. And that's why I picked AI and ChatGPT as a cultural pop influence in today's world because it's everywhere. If you anything else, like, as I'm sure that some people would pick TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or something, or Reddit or something as like a pop culture influence,
Mhm.
but all of those things are being influenced by AI and ChatGPT.
The things that you can do just for a personal Instagram post, the way that you can make it look better or, edit somebody into it using an AI function, turn something into a video using an AI function. Like that is one area where I do feel like you do need to learn, even if you don't like it, you do need to learn enough about it to just stay up to date. Because just like the things you listed, like all those social media things and having everyone has a phone and everyone who's grown up with a phone in their pocket will be outpacing you 20 times, if now they're 10 times, because they'll have those tools. They won't even be thinking ethically or like, what am I doing? Do I need a union? They're just going to be using them, learning them. And then they will
Yeah,
be better equipped for the jobs that now we're seeing, all these jobs, not even just in tech, but everywhere, there's something being incorporated.
yeah, totally.
Now, I do want to ask about specifically directing with AI. Like, is there an area where you feel like it is most helpful as a director? Is there an area where it's come up for you where there's been those kinds of challenges or those discussions of like, how can we use this? How should we use this? Especially after what happened last summer, where we know where our protections are. Let's not try to jump that line.
So for me, personally, as a director in television, um, AI and ChatGPT have not really been part uh, of the job for me at all. Whether it's me personally or even with the studio or network that I'm working with, um, unless those writers of an episode for some reason use AI to do something, maybe for
I was
research.
also kind of thinking like, can you read a script and tell if AI wrote it? Like I feel like you
I
can,
You
but I
probably can,
also
but
think
I
by the time it gets to you, somebody has touched it up.
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. But I think the most I have, if I have used it, it's been for research. I've used like ChatGPT to ask, like, what's the most warm-blooded horse, like, meaning like the horse that's the. I just did recommend an episode of something about horses, and there's warm bloods, cold bloods, and hot bloods, right? And so, what's the breed, in case we wanted to mention this breed in the episode, so stuff like that, and it finds that information for me really fast, faster than Google usually.
Hmm, that's
Yeah,
interesting. I also would never have thought to ask it that. I will say that.
yeah,
I
you
don't
can
know
ask it.
why. I mean, I also, but I will say this, like maybe you can tell based on the way I'm talking already about tech, but I am a Luddite. I don't, you were saying like you can have, your Alexa, your Siri turn on things. And I'm like, no, I don't. I don't want a smart house. I don't want it to like lock me in a bathroom. I don't get up and turn a knob on a TV, but I do still use the remote. So that I think there are certain areas where maybe I'm not thinking to even ask it that because I am still stuck in the older way. Like Google, obviously,
Right?
is my best friend. I yell at everybody who doesn't fact check things because when you have a tool like that in your pocket to not know an answer, you can look it up. It's crazy to me to
Absolutely.
not be able
Yeah,
to look it up, to just stay ignorant. But I guess what you're
absolutely.
saying is you could do that on other, it doesn't, I'm not here to plug Google, is what I'm saying. It doesn't have
Right.
to be one
Totally.
brand. The reason I also asked you about directing with AI was because I keep having that image in my head of the Fall Guy. If you saw the movie where they scan
I
him and then
did.
they use his image to, spoiler alert, to pretend he killed someone so that the person who actually killed him
Hmm. Yeah.
doesn't get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about, I guess that aspect for you, like, are you concerned about not nefarious things like that, but are you concerned about like even your fans who have good intentions taking your image and making other images with it and things that you don't authorize and sanction?
Yeah. I mean, I'm worried about it, but I've also, for me, it's just like, if I go to a restaurant, I know somebody might come up and say, "Hey, man, can I get a picture with you?" I know what I've gotten myself into getting into this job at this point. And so if somebody is going to do that, take the image and use it, all I can do is hopefully have the right kind of people in my on my team, go out and find that and debunk it and take it down. Um, um, but if it's not that, it's going to be a paparazzi hanging out in the bush, taking pictures of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and probably right now Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez and Jeremy Garner. But um, you know, there are always going to be people out there trying to make money off of people that are in the popular crowd, if you will.
When
Oh yeah,
Castle was on, I keep thinking of like, oh, somebody would have made a video, like a little, they wrote fan fiction, but now they have the tools, they can make their own
they did.
show effectively.
Yeah, they could, and they were crazy. I mean, which was great for us. I mean, we loved having amazing fans and diehard fans. But yeah, we would sometimes go to shoot in downtown LA, and there'd be a crowd of 30 people, kind of waiting for our vans to pull up because they had this thing back then called locationvacation.com.
Oh,
So if you wanted to just plan your vacation in LA and go to movie and television locations, somebody from the Los Angeles Film Commission was sliding addresses to people on the down low for $400 or so, and you could figure out where they were shooting that day, different productions. And so Um, that was a little odd, but um, that's the world I chose to live in. I mean, since I was a little kid, I've known that sometimes people on television shows are you pay attention to their private lives as well, and I guess what they're doing too. And so, I knew I try to be as private as possible. Um, but if someone takes my image, that's just something we have to now deal with. No way to stop it at this point.
No, it's a healthier attitude, I think,
Yeah,
than to like live in fear of it or to like be the
and
person
yeah, or
scouring the internet looking for it,
exactly.
you know?
Yeah, and just not having a disdain or a hate. That's a lot of energy. It takes energy to hate something. And so I don't want to waste energy hating AI or hating ChatGPT. I would rather waste the energy because then it helps my brain stay functional. How do I learn how to use it? How
Mhm.
do I learn to have it benefit my life? And so uh, that's what I'll do.
I know you just said you stay private, so I don't want to make you get too personal, but is there anything that you do feel like outside of as you were giving professional examples before, like is there something personal that you use that you think it's helpful for?
Personal, personal.
Yeah, I mean, however personal I guess you want to get, but like all the examples I was asking for before really were related to work, but then I think there are probably, like I said earlier, how people are using it for their own Instagrams. Like,
Hmm. I
is there
mean,
some function? I mean, and to be honest with you, I probably don't know all the functions of it because I've studied and
I
researched
use it. Yeah,
pieces of it.
I use it. I'm on a personal level. I use it a lot for my creative pursuits, the writing that I do, and stuff like that. Like if I say, uh, I've had it create a character for me, create a
Oh,
character that has, these are the qualities, and now give me a character breakdown, and then I would take that and then edit it, or find me a character name, all these things. And I'll give me a list of names. Give me a list of 10 names for a character like this.
hmm.
Because sometimes when I'm creating something, I use the same names over and over again. I don't know how many times I've used the name Marco. I don't know why I love the
Yeah.
name Marco,
I
but
mean,
I
I think we
always,
all do that though. Like it's just
right.
something
But,
that
but AI helps me not do it. AI helps me then go, oh, I never thought about using that name. That's great. Let me use that name, Miles, or whatever. So now so I use it on a personal level. I use it
okay.
for that for sure. Um,
Have you ever
uh,
put in your name and said like, tell me what you know about actor director? Like,
no,
okay. I would, because that
no, I won't do that.
those are the fun experiments that I would like to see, like what it's finding that is A, correct, but B, that it
Right,
thinks you will be most responsive to, in terms
right,
of like
yeah,
there's so much about you, it's pulling from everything on the internet. Is it going to lead with This Is Us? Is it going to lead with Castle? Is it going to lead with what you're directing today? Like, is it its own version of SEO that it's trying to tailor to a person? Because there, I think there's a lot of value in finding ways, I hate to use this word, but like to target marketing, I mean,
yeah,
that's maybe cynical and maybe we shouldn't all want corporations to do that. But at the same time, I think like there's so many projects that are mismarketed that if it could speak to someone a specific way and get them in the door, but it gets somebody else in the door a different way, like I'm all about that kind of like personalization, really.
yeah. I mean, I think that's great. Yeah,
Who knows? I don't know. I mean, maybe after this, I'm just gonna have to like start poking around with it a little bit more and see how much of it is more advanced than I think it currently is.
yeah.
So obviously before I let you, I want you to plug what you're currently allowed to plug. Can you tell us
I'll,
a little bit about what you just directed?
I just directed an episode of a show called The Irrational, NBC show with Jesse L. Martin. I just got back from that. I'm directing on a new show called Ballard, which is a spinoff of Bosch Legacy. I start that in like 2 weeks, and then I'm going back to Tracker to shoot more of that. And I have a couple of films that I've been hired to direct and trying to. I just had a meeting this morning with a potential lead in one of those movies,
Nice.
um, Victor Rasu, who I love. So we'll see. But yeah, so doing that, and then I have a farm that I'm rebuilding. Remodeling the house and the barn and the workshop and the whole
That's
farm. It's
cool. I
Yeah,
feel
so
like
doing
next time
that.
I want a tour. I just want a tour of the farm. Like that's You
Oh
know,
yeah,
I don't think
13
anyone
acres.
saw my dog walk back here, but like that's
I
my
did.
next endeavor is like I want to do something with animals. I don't know how to make
Oh
that
yeah.
work. It would not be on a podcast format, but that's really, I mean, I was gonna say like everything you were listing was very cool and a lot. So then to add all of that on top of it is, I think,
Right.
insane, but great.
Yeah. I think it's the farm stuff is like the stuff that grounds me and that like keeps me, you know, connected to the planet, to the earth, and it gives me peace to be there, quiet, dark. It's amazing. Yeah.
I don't want to be the Debbie Downer who says like, well, when the robots take over, well, I'll hide at your farm. But that is also what ran through my head. So
Right.
keep a
Exactly.
spare bedroom in over a loft or something, just in case. You never
For
know.
sure. For sure.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Obviously, we said many times on this episode that unfortunately breaking is not available to stream in full anywhere. You might be able to find an old VHS or DVD on eBay or Amazon. You can go to YouTube if you want to watch clips and see what about the movie John fell in love with as a kid. That's what I did in order to research, and it was a good time. And then his current influence, AI, ChatGPT. I'm going to say something crazy. You can Google it. I know that that's not what it wants you to do. It wants you to use it, not Google. But hey, you got to start somewhere if you want to learn about it, right? This has been made possible by Pop Culture, the podcast season 2. I hope you all will join me back here next week for another brand new episode, new guest, and new influences in pop culture's past and present. Thank you all for listening and or watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, following. Please let me know who you want to see on this podcast and maybe even what you want to hear talked about.